Good morning.
David Clark couldn't tell me before how many test kits are in this country. Can you?
We have 30,000 swabs as part of our testing capacity for up to 1,500 a day. And of course, as you can imagine, the whole world, Mike, is relying on the kit needed to undertake testing. So it's not a capacity issue. We have as much capacity as some of the countries who are testing as many people in the world as anywhere else. It's just making sure that everyone has the supplies, and everyone is in demand at the moment.
So how many kits have we got?
As I said, we've got 30,000 for the purposes of swabbing.
That's the swabs, but the kits themselves.
So that is obviously an important part of that. If you're talking about the machines, undertake capacity is not the problem. Capacity is not the problem. The different elements of the testing are the things that everyone is seeking. So we have the ability to continue to keep testing 1,500 a day, which is significant for our proportion of our population that need to be tested. Of course, that's about equivalent to what Korea is doing relative to population. It's just making sure everyone's got the different parts required.
Yeah. So I take it the ministry don't know, he doesn't know, and you don't know.
No, that is not true, Mike.
Well, he's already told us he doesn't know, and the ministry doesn't know. So
I absolutely dispute that. To imply that we are not in a situation of understanding inventory at a granular level for our testing is an unfair statement to make. We have a group of tireless professionals making sure that New Zealand is doing everything it can to slow down the transmission of COVID-19. We've been very successful to date, but the preparation has been intense. So I don't think that is a fair assumption. Our capacity for testing is significant. We are in the same position as everyone else in the world, high demand for elements for testing, and we continue to do everything we can to make sure we have all we need.
How close to closing schools are we?
So that's a question of where we are in transmission cycle. So if we have a case that affects a school, you'll see, as we did in Logan Park, school shuts down. We shut it down for 72 hours. Two reasons for that. Gives us the chance to contact trace kids who might have been in contact with that case. So for Logan Park, for instance, we had 150 contacts there. In that case, we actually tested all of them. That was an extra chance for us to check if we had community transmission. We did not. They all came back negative. Then, after 72 hours, we reopened the school. The other reason for that, 72 hours, research is telling us after that amount of time, COVID isn't on surfaces anymore. So even if you haven't done a good thorough clean, which we are as well, that's a good time to let.
But back to schools generally, how close to closing all of them are we?
Well, then you're looking more, if you have community transmission, that's where you think about that tool of closing schools. We don't have that. The areas, the countries we want to replicate are the likes of Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan. They've tended to, as in Singapore, do what we're doing, close schools if you have a case, deal with that, then reopen them. If you close all your schools without some rationale for that, then you have kids going off to grandparents, kids still spending time with one another, and so that causes other problems.
There are meetings today between a number of principals and the unions, and the threat is they're going to pull the pin today for closure on Monday. What are you going to do about that?
Make sure that they understand, of course, that we are basing every decision on science and evidence. And so children and young people we know are less affected by COVID-19. But that doesn't mean, of course, that we don't have to think about their ability to transmit to others. And so if schools shut down prematurely, then you might have children going to grandparents who are more susceptible. You take out your workforce who have to then look after them, and that includes our health workforce. There are wider ramifications. So the assurance I wish to give is that we've been precautionary and evidence-based in everything.
Has the ministry threatened schools with funding cuts if they close?
Oh, look, I haven't heard of any threats of people.
Well, I have. Would that surprise you?
And well, look, I know there is anxiety, Mike. And I know that people will be looking overseas at countries that are closing schools, but they are in the middle of outbreaks that are uncontrolled and where they can't trace anymore. We still can. We will take precautionary measures when we are at a point where those decisions need to be made. We, for instance, put in border controls, 15 days after our first case. We will move quickly. I need people to work with us as we do that.
How close are we to closing pubs, restaurants, and basically locking the place down?
Two things on that. Yesterday we put out guidance on mass gatherings. Yeah. So we said, look, over 100.
But that's what I'm asking. This is a pattern. It's 100, it's 50, it's 10, it's closed. So how quickly is that going to happen?
This is where I think actually it's really good just to go back to the basic principle, because then actually you can, you don't have to have these iterative decisions. If you can't stay 2 metres apart, don't get together. Because that is the guidance for close contact now. That's if you're within spitting distance of people, that's when, if someone gets COVID, we'll be calling you and telling you to self-isolate. And so it really is good practice to keep that distance, because then we don't end up either picking it up or inconveniencing you if you have to go into self-isolation.
But in answer to the question, you seem to indicate that for schools, if you got community spread, you'd look to trigger it potentially. What's the trigger to go from 100 to 50 to 10 to 0, in other words, to lockdown?
So the second point I've already been making, Mike, is actually if you want to get ahead of outbreak, so we want to be the countries that have smaller waves, then everyone needs to be prepared. Be prepared to work from home, and that's the message I'm sending. Be prepared for that message. Be prepared to cancel non-essential trips. Be prepared to, reduce down that social contact, and in fact do that now. So we're telling people now.
I get all of this. All I'm trying to work out, what's your thinking in heading towards locking the whole place down? What do we need to be seeing?
Yeah, and we could, if we see that we're starting to see spikes, then we'll take precautionary measures when I'll then say, that's where we need to be working from home and so on. So what we're working to is making sure that people have a really clear idea of the kinds of measures we'll be asking for at different points of transmission.
Okay. Listen to what Rob Fife said on the program yesterday. Listen to this.
I'm amazed that we actually think it's right to still have people coming to New Zealand for a holiday, for God's sake. I mean, it's nuts, right?
So you closed the border yesterday. Why didn't you do it at least a week ago?
So we did it. We closed. We required everyone to self-isolate 15 days after.
Yeah, I know all of that. Mike, why didn't you close the border a week ago?
This is really important to me. Let me finish. No one in the world had done that.
So what?
We have now closed our borders with only 28 cases. No one in the world has done that. We have had border measures in for a month. Every time we've done that, people have got the message and they've stopped coming. When I saw that people hadn't stopped coming, we closed it. I was not happy.
But we spent the whole week. We spent the whole week watching tourists with backpacks wander into this country, telling the authorities to get stuffed. And we've got we got cruise ships parking in the harbour, still discharging passengers when none of that's necessary.
That is untrue. We have already barred cruise ships.
There were cruise ships in the harbour yesterday in Auckland.
That cruise ships have been barred, Mike.
They were in the harbour in Auckland yesterday.
They have been barred, Mike. I'm happy to look into that situation, but that will not be a new cruise ship.
That's what I'm saying.
They have been barred.
That's what I'm saying.
Mike,
new cruise ships coming in. So they were still in the country. Backpackers were still in the country. People weren't self-isolating all of this week because the borders were open.
No one in the world has taken the measures that we have.
It's not a contest.
So early as we have. And Mike, the measures that we took on Saturday had requirements attached to them. We have had police knocking on people's doors to check that they have self-isolated. We have deported people who have said that they won't self-isolate.
But why have you deported them? You've only deported them. But Jacinda, you've only deported them because you allowed them into the country.
Mike, again, we put requirements in place, and if people didn't follow them,
but if they weren't allowed in the country, if the border was closed, they wouldn't have come into the country, therefore they wouldn't have broken the rules, therefore they wouldn't have been deported.
Mike, can I just have you pause for a moment? As I said, when I saw people not following our expectations, we closed the border. So we acted when we saw that, firstly. Secondly, we seem to be missing what is an extraordinary thing that has happened here. Never in our history have we closed our borders. Never. And I don't take that decision lightly. But we did it with 28 cases, with no community transmission, because we are doing everything we can to look after New Zealanders. Now, I have to look everyone in the eye and make sure that I'm doing the right thing by them, and we have. But we have been doing this ahead of the curve. And I make no apology for that, and we will continue to act decisively. But I stand by the decisions we've made and the early point we continue to make them.
Appreciate your time as always. Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister with us, and she'll be back Monday.